Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Police Off the Cuff, Real Crime Stories. I'm your host, retired NYPD Sergeant Bill Cannon, a 27-year veteran of the NYPD. Guys, it's so great to be back. I did a show yesterday on how the Police Off the Cuff podcast got hacked, and we were down for nearly 2 weeks. I was afraid I was going to lose my channel and not be able to get it back, lose 5.5 to 6 years of work, hard work, over 3,000 shows, and it was really difficult to get the channel back. And it without two individuals from a company called Grow You Media who were with me every step of the way, and I pay them to make me video shorts. And when this happened, they were just invaluable. I could not have gotten this channel back without them. I am definitely no computer. Have basic competency, and to retrieve this channel, you needed much, much more than just basic competency. And again, I want to thank Anand and Tanu. They're both from India, as you probably recognize their names. They did an incredible, incredible job. And I want to thank all of our fans, all of our subscribers, all of our friends who were rooting for us. I couldn't even communicate with you because the hacker had also hacked both of my email addresses. And I couldn't even, the only way I could communicate was making memes and posting them on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter to let you know that we were fighting for our channel. And we fought so hard, and it was a really stressful 2 weeks. And I want to thank Phil Grimaldi, and of course, Mike Geary, who proverbially held my hand through this because, you know, I was close to being up on the GW bridge. It was that serious. Anyway, again, enough said with that. I don't want to dwell on it, but thank you so much for staying with us. We are Police Off the Cuff. You know, we're going to cover, everyone knows there's a new mayor-elect in New York City, and big changes coming, and especially for the organization is most dear to our heart, the NYPD, under scrutiny. Radical plans are a big possibility for the NYPD. And what does that mean for the citizenry? What does that mean for the officers that make their living as peace officers, police officers, protecting the public? What does that mean for the citizenry, for their well-being, for their safety? What does that mean for the fact that there's thousands of emotionally disturbed persons wandering the streets of New York, the subways of New York, making regular citizens who are going to work every day feel unsafe? What about their civil rights? What about their safety? What about their rights to have the police protect them? Well, we're going to question all of those things and see how this man, Zoran Mamdani, a 34-year-old self-described democratic socialist, has big plans in how he wants to change the city, not just in law enforcement, other things, but since this is our business, law enforcement, we're gonna report on that, and we're gonna talk about his plans for New York City, his plans for the NYPD, and the fact that the NYPD is bare bones right now. You know, bare bones in the way that officers are leaving in droves, and that's not a good sign for the city. Recruitment and retention is a very difficult thing. Getting people to take the job of police officer for the NYPD, which used to be one of the most coveted jobs in the nation as far as the police profession, no longer. NYPD police officers are jumping off like lemmings off a cliff, and they're jumping off the job and going to other police departments where it is the working conditions are better, where the pay is better, and where they're treated much better. So these are some of the things we're going to talk about. So folks, hold on to your hats, hold on to your loved ones, hold on to your thoughts, hold on to that service dog right next to you on the couch. We're about to enter true crime from a police perspective. We're about to enter the off-the-cuff zone, the police off-the-cuff zone. There has to be some common sense.
They were the ones who called 911 to get him help, and now they're calling for change.
I'm going to introduce one at a time my two co-hosts tonight. And I think during the nearly 2-week shutdown, they realized how much they really love doing this too, and how much we're a family. And they missed all of the people that are part of our YouTube Police Off the Cuff family. And it was like we had no contact with them. It was like we lost our best friend. Anyway, first I'm going to introduce to you retired NYPD Sergeant, professor at Albertus Magnus College in Connecticut, attorney. Welcome to the show, Professor Mike Geary. Welcome, Mike.
Bill, good to see you. Good to be back. Thank you for having me on.
Mike, I know you called me a bunch of times during this, and you sound a little bit stressed out too, that, you didn't have this outlet to express yourself,
Yeah, no, you missed this. It gets into your bloodstream. You got to do it. As a cop, you got to do it.
That's very true. And I'm going to also introduce retired NYPD detective, straight out of Brooklyn, Detective Phil Grimaldi. Welcome, Phil.
Thank you for having me back, Billy. It's great to see you. It's great to be back on. It was like being kidnapped for almost 2 weeks. And like Mike said, this stuff gets in your blood and keeps me connected to everyday current events and connected with colleagues, my former colleagues in the NYPD. But scary stuff what went on, Billy. And we talked you through it. We kept you off the bridge, thank God. And just glad that we got it back.
Yeah, for sure. And folks, if you don't know what happened, I'll just tell you quickly. I stupidly, and I'll take the title stupid, I stupidly clicked on an email without checking the title of the email, which would have showed me in the .com, .edu, whatever it was. It had an unintelligible thing. And as soon as I clicked on it, I regretted it. And I knew right away I had been hacked. And I got on it immediately with another company that works for us, Tech to Us. And he took them down, but it was too late. We had already been infiltrated. And what got me pulled off of YouTube was that the hacker put 2 videos up on our YouTube channel that violated community standards. And that's what pulled me off of YouTube. And I had to prove it was my channel, even though it was my channel for 5 years or over 5 years. I had to prove to them with all kinds of different electronic evidence, and I made a police report, I made an FBI report, I did everything possible. Anyway, I don't want to bore you with the details. We're back.
We're back,
and I won't ever do that again. I swear, Mom, I'll never do that again. And so anyway, tonight's a show, and we had to start out a little bit easy just to get our wings back, right? We had to start out with a case that perhaps, I think it is national. It is a national story because the changing of policing at a national level is a real thing. And we've all heard, and it all stems from the defund the police movement, which to me is a horrific movement because even if I wasn't a cop, if I was never a cop, as a citizen, I would hate to hear anyone say defund the police. Oh, really? Who's going to protect me? Who's going to protect my family? Who's going to protect my home? Who's going to protect my car? All of those things. And so to raise that specter of defund the police is absolutely ridiculous. Professor Mike, your thoughts?
Bill, I talk to this kind of thing to my students all the time. And I always remind them, when you're talking about criminal justice, do not get, emotional about this sort of thing. And I tell them specifically, if you can reduce your political views or your desires into like a 3-word slogan, defund the police, you're lost. You don't know what you're talking about because you're just telling people how ignorant you are because you're not even thinking about the consequences of this. This is coming from a viewpoint that you can't trust the police, that you don't need the police out there, that you don't need as many as you have out there investigating rapes, robberies, kidnappings, homicides. You don't need them on patrol responding to mentally ill people. You don't need them out on patrol responding to everyday needs. That's a very scary thing. And it comes from people who do not like the police. And what they want to do is take money and put it more towards taking care of the criminals, not the citizens. And that's really very dangerous.
You know, Mike, I think you hit it on the head. And before I toss this to Phil, I just want to say one of the things that police do, and we're getting away from this too, is arrest offenders. And then it has to be followed up by the prosecution of offenders. And if convicted, sending those offenders to jail or to prison. And if there is no teeth in the law, if there's not a dog biting you on the ass after you do something bad, then criminals are just going to do their crimes with impunity and have not be afraid of any consequences. So there has to be punishment for committing crime, and not feel good slogans like defund the police or let's get the Department of Community Safety and have some social workers show up and talk to you about how, you know, your dad didn't treat you right when you were a kid. And I love some of these expressions they come up with. They have housing inequality. They have food insecurity. They have all of these socialistic words that, how about, you know, not everyone is born with a silver spoon, or not everyone is born poor, not everyone's born rich. People all are born under and into different circumstances, yet we all live in the same world and we all suffer the same types of things happen to us. The rich man isn't immune to death or sickness or anything else that everyone else, and neither is the poor man. And I'm not oversimplifying it, but with crime has to come punishment. And if there is, there's no reason for a criminal to stop committing crimes. Phil.
Yeah, previously, Zoran Mamdani had supported defunding NYPD as recent as 2020, where he called the NYPD anti-queer, racist, and a major threat to public safety. Now, he's walked back those comments since he ran for mayor and he won the election a few weeks ago. But as a former member of the NYPD, what is he showing someone like me, and what is he showing the citizens of New York City? He has not shown me any positive action toward the NYPD, other than today he did announce that he's going to keep the current police commissioner, which sounds like a step in the right direction. But over the last several weeks, a cop had been shot just 2 days ago, and he was nowhere in the press conference. Now, you're the mayor of New York City, mayor-elect. I think he should have been at that press conference, okay? That's number one. Number two, the Veterans Day parade was held within the last week. He was nowhere to be found. He didn't attend. He didn't march. He's the mayor-elect of New York City. That's something that says something to me. He doesn't support the military. Doesn't seem like he supports the police. Now, when this defund the police action and this slogan, Billy, you went through some of the slogans. When this started in 2020, we saw the consequences of that. Defund the police, crime went through the roof everywhere, just all over the country. And so we know what the consequences are. So he's going to walk back some of those statements. I want to see action. I want to see how he's going to handle crime, because that's when everybody gets up in the morning and they go to work, whether they're taking their kids to school, whatever it is, they want to be safe. That's what government's number one priority is: keep the people of the city safe. He's the head of the city now. He's the mayor. He controls the police department. Let's see what actions he's going to take to step in the right direction.
Absolutely. From the chat, Lisa Marie Pritchard, look at Melbourne, Australia to see the outcome of defunding police and soft on crime. Lisa Marie, I 100% agree with you. Here's a clip with the fact that Mamdani has chosen to keep the current police commissioner, Jessica Tisch. Probably his advisors say, if you lose the police department in your first year, you are done. So he probably got some good advice and said, in order not to lose the police department, keep the current police commissioner.
Questions about Mayor-elect Mamdani's administration, and today we got the answer as Police Commissioner Jessica Tisch accepts his offer to remain head of the NYPD. Good afternoon, I'm Lisa Evers. Thanks for joining us for the News Block. Mayor-elect Mamdani pointing to Tisch's track record in rooting out corruption with the department, as well as bringing down violent crime. Fox 5's Morgan Mackay has more on today's announcement and the reaction coming this afternoon. Morgan, thanks for being with us. So tell us about about this.
Yeah, Lisa, this is one of the big appointments that we've been waiting for. And Mayor-elect Zohran Mamdani had said that he wanted Jessica Tisch, the NYPD commissioner, to stay on the job before he actually even won the election. And today, Tisch officially accepting this position. But the two do have somewhat different views when it comes to policy and policing. For example, Mamdani supports bail reform, while Tisch thinks there should be changes to target repeat offenders. But in perhaps a sign the two are moving closer together on policy ideas, Mamdani, in an interview earlier today, seemed to back away from a proposal that would give the Civilian Complaint Review Board, or CCRB, the authority to discipline officers, saying today that this responsibility belongs to the police commissioner.
That is a huge change in policy.
Right.
CCRB, for folks in the audience that don't, it's the Civilian Complaint Review Board. And officers in New York City are forced to take so much abuse you would not believe that they have to take this abuse. In fact, some genius came out with the idea that they should carry around business cards. And when any civilian asks them for a business card with their name, shield number, command, and telephone number of that command, they must present it. If they don't, they will get a civilian complaint.
5-day rip, Billy. 5-day rip. They get a 5-day rip if they don't produce that card. They lose 5 days.
And the evidence of that is that they wear, also another change in the last 5 or 10 years, is body-worn video. So they can simply go to the video and watch the interaction that the officer had with the civilian who demanded, and could be demanding it in a very disrespectful way, or in a situation that is very tense and emotions are high. And the officer must respond and give this card. And when Phil says a 5-day rip, could be thousands of dollars in lost income. So these are some of the things that the officers have to deal with. In addition to, when they get a civilian complaint, the Civilian Complaint Review Board will call the officer down and interview the officer with all the evidence. And then they will do their investigative report and recommend a penalty. This administration, Mamdani, was said to have favored allowing the Civilian Complaint Review Board mete out the penalty. And this police commissioner and former police commissioner says, if that is the case, that will be a disaster, because you have people on the Civilian Complaint Review Board who hate the police. So what type of penalties do you think they're going to mete out for the lowest level offense? Mike?
Yeah, Bill, it's unworkable, and it doesn't make any sense for a police commissioner or any commissioner, like of the sanitation department, fire department, you name it. It doesn't make any sense for that head person, the head honcho, not to be able to discipline the people under him. That is direct chain of command, and that's how you hold that person accountable. To have people who join the Civilian Complaint Review Board tend to be people who don't like the police to begin with. They're not just disinterested arbitrators and investigators. They are people who already volunteer for that job and get paid because they want to investigate police wrongdoing, because they feel that police cannot be trusted, or they're racist, or they're homophobic. I mean, the thing about Mamdani is he can say some ridiculous things, but he says it from a perspective of ignorance. He's never worked as a police officer. He's probably never done a few ride-alongs. He's never gotten to know the police. That is the most ridiculous thing. I think the police department bends over backwards for the last 40 years that I know of to be non-homophobic, non-racist, that sort of thing, to be very sensitive to that. And for him to say so many ignorant things, I think the reason why he's keeping Jessica Tisch on is because she said, look, I have to have the final say in how I discipline my officers. It's not, you cannot give it away to somebody else. It won't work.
Phil, and I mean, Mike, that is the main reason that Keishant Sewell,
that's right,
a former police commissioner who came from Nassau, who was a budding superstar.
Mm-hmm.
She was a fantastic police commissioner. I think she only stayed 1 year because she was being micromanaged by Mayor Adams and his crew of, carpetbaggers. And she left. A superstar police commissioner left. And I think that Jessica Tisch is sort of laying it out for Mamdani before she's willing to take, look, if you want me to be police commissioner, right out of the box, you cannot allow me not to have overall power in deciding penalties once civilian complaints are meted out. Let me quickly go to this commercial.
Have you or a loved one been injured in an accident with a commercial vehicle, like an 18-wheeler, delivery van, bus, or rideshare, and you weren't at fault? These cases aren't like regular car accidents. They involve corporations, insurance companies, and complex transportation laws. You need an experienced attorney who knows how to fight and win. That's where the team at 911 Law Call comes in. We connect you with top law firms that specialize in commercial vehicle accidents and have a proven track record of securing real compensation for victims just like you. The consultation is free. There are no fees unless we win. Call 866-814-2911 now. That's 866-814-2911. 866-814-2911. Justice for commercial vehicle victims starts here. 866-814-2911. No fees unless we win. That's 866-814-2911.
You know, one of the big things that the police department is going to change, or they propose to change, is the response to a job known as EDPs, and that's emotionally disturbed persons. And the idea is that with an annual budget over $5 billion and making it the largest police department in the world, officers spend a huge chunk of their time responding to thousands of mental health crisis calls, situations many aren't trained for. This is what they claim, but they are trained for it. So what the socialists want to do, Mamdani and a lot of these people that are reinventing the wheel, they say, let's free up the police to fight crime, and let's have social workers respond to these jobs. But what they don't take into consideration is that these mental health jobs are extremely, extremely dangerous. And cops frequently have to use non-lethal force, tasers, mace, restraining devices. And it gets to that point because mentally ill people do not want to comply with the lawful orders of a police officer. So how are they going to respond when they're civilians, social workers? Are they going to, handle these jobs out on the street inside apartment buildings? And a lot of the apartment buildings that these social workers will go to are dangerous in themselves. So it's like, this is lunacy. And that is one of the things that he thinks he's going to redirect $1 billion from the NYPD's budget and hire civilian social workers to respond to these emotionally disturbed person jobs. And I'd also like to say that includes the subways, where some of the worst psychos on this earth live. And you read about the horrific crimes that occur on the subway, including emotionally disturbed persons pushing people onto the tracks. At least it happens 3-4 times a year. Someone loses their life being pushed in front of a train. Are those persons also going to be, is that going to be corrected by civilian social workers? Phil.
Well, myself being a former transit cop from 1982 to 1983, I can tell you that this time of the year, homeless people who have mental illness basically move into the subway system to stay warm. It's just a fact of life. Now, you talked about how the NYPD will interdict these situations to try and de-escalate them. They don't do it just as, second nature. They do it because of their training. They train for this. We go for in-service training. They do role playing, and they do specific things that have been tried previously and didn't work. And they say, we're not going to do that. We're going to do this. And they try to de-escalate. Now you have social workers that there's probably a place for social workers within law enforcement. I get it. But when you have an emotionally disturbed person, a lot of times people forget these situations don't start out violent, but I've seen many of them turn that way. And what's going to happen at that point? They're going to start calling for help. And in between the time that they do call for help and the police can actually get there, there could be a tragedy, both with the social worker and the person they're trying to interdict, whether it be a homeless person, someone with a drug problem, or just someone that has mental health issues and has found himself in the subway system or wherever it is on the street. So with that said, we really have to look carefully at something like this. This is a major step, which I believe is going in the wrong direction. Let's face it, Billy, you cannot outsource danger. You don't know when it's going to happen. And I'll tell you from my experience of over 22 years on the police department, it happens when you least expect it. It just jumps out at you when you're having a nice day, a bright sunny day, and then all of a sudden you turn the corner and there it is. So sometimes these things, like I said, you can't outsource danger.
You know, Phil and Mike, I don't know if you caught what I said, but there's buildings in New York City that most civilians would be afraid just even to go into the building without police protection to respond to these jobs. So what about that? What about when they get called to a EDP job in a building that is so dangerous? They're like, I'm not going in that building. What then? What then? So it's just so to the problem that they claim is it's an overburdened system. And really what it is, in my opinion, is they're trying to take money from the NYPD, in this case, $1 billion, redirect the money from the police department and give it to these civilian social workers. It's like a sleight of hand. It's like, it's not even funny that they're trying to do this. It
sounds like a waste of money, Billy. It really does.
It's a total waste of money, and it will not work. And there are, of course, other progressive areas in this country claim that this works like a charm. Mike.
Yeah, Billy, you're going to have social workers who are going to go into buildings that when we go in, you, me, and Phil go into these buildings, we're looking over our shoulders. We're looking around corners. We have our hand on our firearm just to make sure in case something happens. You know, you have to be really quiet. You turn your radio down all the way. You and your partner are like, talking really quiet because you don't want to let people know you're going there. So you get a lot of that. And so therefore, you're going to go to these locations. You're going to have somebody who may be flying. I mean, just absolutely flying on some sort of medication or no medication or alcohol, and they're schizophrenic or they're whatever it happens to be, and they're violent. And you're going to have to try to do something with them. If you go with a partner, you got two people, you got two sets of handcuffs, you got plenty of pepper spray. You can tag team this person. You can get them handcuffed, get them restrained, and get them into the back of an ambulance so they can go to the hospital and be treated. These people are going to go in there. Are they going to have pepper spray? Or are they going to be able to defend themselves? What happens if they get shot and killed? It won't be the first social worker that's been shot and killed.
You know, Mike, just to interrupt you for a second. They don't care. No. They haven't even thought of these eventualities. They don't care that they just want to say, oh, look, civilians are doing the job of police, and it's relieving the police from responding to over 200,000 mental health emergency calls.
Right.
Why is the word emergency being used? Because it's an emergency, right?
Yeah.
So let's sacrifice civilians because they're too dumb to know the danger here. And let's relieve the police. It's not really relieving the police. They don't care about relieving the police. They want the police department's budget to go to another budget of civilians. And they think that will work much better. And because, again, our theme here is they don't like the police. So let's cut the police department's budget and let's give it to civilians. I want to get also to the one thing that really irks me and drives me out of my mind. And this is another progressive theory of hiring what they call violence interrupters. This is the most horrific idea I have ever heard out of the mouth of a progressive in my life. And for those that don't know, a violence interrupter, this is a theory by some criminal analysts, criminal justice professionals, left-wing PhDs that, wait, most of the violent crime is coming from gangs, right, within inner city communities. So why don't we get former gangbangers who have gone to jail, gone to prison, to be intermediaries with these gangs? Have them go talk to these gangs when it looks like the anger is bubbling up between the Bloods, the Crips, the Latin Kings. There's way more gangs in New York City. Every corner in Harlem has a different named gang. So let's hire these criminals, untrained criminals. They love to use that word trained. Untrained, their only training is they were gangbangers. Let's hire them. Let's pay them a lot of money too, because they're from the neighborhood that we want to return the money to. Let's hire these gangbangers and we'll call them violence interrupters. This can work. Phil.
Yeah, Billy, I could recall a time when I worked in the 70 precinct with during the crack epidemic in the 80s. And there was major drug dealers that we knew they were on the street. And we went past the muster room where there was a community board meeting going on. And lo and behold, who's in this community board meeting but one of the major drug dealers from the area, from the community. We obviously escorted him out. And so now what you're doing is you're taking people who are former gangbangers allegedly, but you're bringing them into the fold where they can gain intel on what's going on. Now, the purpose of that specific drug dealer that I was talking about, he was trying to find out who was making complaints about the locations where him and his minions were dealing narcotics, so that way they could make threats. We've deciphered that. So now you're bringing in gang violence interrupters, former gangbangers. And what are they going to do? They're going to gain intel. That's what they're going to do. They're going to give intel to other people that are in the street. They could possibly say, well, we stopped this argument here, but they're gaining intel. You have to be very, very careful with something like that. I mean, that's a sensitive nature. That's a very sensitive nature where you could bring people who are in the criminal world into the fold to say, they're going to be violence interrupters. And again, Billy, like you just said, there's no training there. Now you have a liability. A violence interrupter walks into a knife fight or a gunfight and gets hurt. The city gets sued for millions of dollars. We have to think about things like that. And that's a lot of the things that we're talking about here. Social worker gets his head handed to him, or, social workers walk into a building. You were talking about some of the unsafe buildings, a housing project. You know what goes on in the stairways of housing projects. Very, very dangerous. Now you have a possibility where a social worker could get hurt or killed. An innocent civilian can get hurt or killed as a outcome of, the interaction. And if they're going to try and help someone that's emotionally disturbed, has a mental health issue, if that person, you have liability all around. So what's going to happen in a very short period of time? The city may lose millions and millions of dollars with regard to a very, very poor policy.
Absolutely. Folks, this is Police Off the Cuff Real Crime Story. If you like real crime, true crime from a police perspective, you're in the right place. If you're not subscribed, hit that subscribe button, give us a thumbs up, hit a like button, share us with your friends and your family, make lots of comments. If you want to contribute financially, we have a Patreon with 4 different levels and a YouTube channel membership with 5 different levels. And we appreciate all of our friends and our fans and our Police Off the Cuff family members. And now a word from our sponsor. FanDuel's got an offer you don't want to miss this NFL season. New customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet $5, and if it wins, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use all across the app. You can build parlays, bet player props, ride the live lines, whatever your style. FanDuel has you covered. The NFL season is here. The only question is, are you ready to play? You must be 21 years or older and present in select states for Kansas and affiliation with Kansas Star Casino, or 18 plus and present in D.C., Kentucky, or Wyoming. First online real money wager only. $5 first deposit required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets, which expires 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbookfanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit fanduel.com/RG. Call 1-888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org/chat in Connecticut or visit mdgamblinghelp.org in Maryland. Hope is here. Visit gamblinghelplinema.org or call 1-800-327-5050 for 24/7 support in Massachusetts, or call 1-877-8-HOPE-NEW YORK or text HOPE New York in New York. So the centerpiece of the plan by Mamdani is something called the Department of Community Safety. It's not just about tweaking the NYPD, it's about building something entirely new alongside it. The centerpiece of his vision is the creation of a new civilian-led city agency, the Department of Community Safety, or DCS. This wouldn't be a police department. It would be staffed by trained professionals like social workers, mental health counselors, and violence interrupters. Its mission would be to take over the jobs police are currently stuck with but aren't best equipped to handle. I would argue that point. This includes most mental health calls, issues tied to homelessness, and other nonviolent incidents. For example, under Mamdani's plan, instead of an NYPD officer showing up to a call about a homeless person in distress on the subway, a dedicated team of outreach workers from the DCS would be sent. The goal is to connect that person with services, housing, and care, not just remove them from the station, which often leads to a dead-end cycle of arrest and displacement. Police would still have a role. They could be called for backup if a situation turns violent, but they wouldn't be the default first responders. It's amazing to me. It is just absolutely amazing. So the police will still be involved. So now you're doubling up on something that certainly, look, I'm not against social workers responding to some of these jobs, but you never know when a homeless person, an emotionally disturbed person, can turn violent. And if they turn violent, it's in that moment. It's not like you could say, oh, let's get the police here now. He's turned violent. It's already too late because you're already getting stabbed or beat up or pushed on the subway tracks. So it's an ill thought of thing. And again, it's almost like the redistribution, instead of wealth, the redistribution of funds earmarked for policing. Let's take it from the police and give it to civilians. And it's really a feel-good, progressive idea that in my neighborhood, I would want no part of it. Mike.
Yeah, you think about when I worked in the Bronx in the 4-6, I was in the 3-0 as a sergeant. You think about response times to jobs, 10:30s, whatever it happens to be, whatever violent crime it might happen to be. Now you're going to have people who are part of a civilian agency responding first. Okay. Are they in radio cars ready to go at a moment's notice? Are they sitting in one of the hospital emergency rooms, having a cup of coffee, waiting for the phone call to come, waiting for the radio call to come? Are they sitting at a station house, a police station house, waiting for the calls to come in? Are they working around the clock? What happens if they go home at 5 o'clock in the evening? What happens if they only work till midnight? Are they going to cover the city 24 hours a day, 7 days a week with this extra layer of love and care for people? Do they have highly trained people, or they're just social workers who mean well? Where's the psychiatrist? Where's the psychologist? Social workers probably are not, they may be equipped to say, okay, we have city services for you, but they may not be able to diagnose, and I can tell you, they're not going to be able to diagnose someone's mental health condition because they've never trained to do it. They have a master's degree, not a PhD in psychology. So it's a feel-good thing. You said it. They're going to take money from the NYPD and create a whole nother city department. Like, we need a whole other city department when the city's already like $1 billion in debt, and staff it with highly trained civilians. I don't think so. It sounds too pie in the sky, kind of scheme to work. It's the devil's in the details, but I don't think this is workable.
Mike, it reminds me of during the de Blasio administration, when his wife ran that mental health program that cost $1 billion. And
what happened to the money?
Right. The money was gone, and the mental health situation on the streets in New York got worse, not better. So it's like you say, it's a pie in the sky program. And they point to other cities where allegedly this has worked. But every step of the way, progressives are taking away the tools from police that police need to do their jobs, i.e., they took away stop, question, and frisk for the most part because they're covered in civilian complaints when they do that. They took away jumping the turnstile on the subway as a misdemeanor and there was teeth in it. Someone would get arrested, spend the weekend in jail for jumping the turnstile. And lo and behold, when someone jumped the turnstile, officers had part of the law, which was search incidental to lawful arrest, where transit officers recovered hundreds of guns on the turnstile jumpers. Almost every time someone does a horrific crime on the subway, what do they ask and what do they find out? Did you pay your fare? No, of course not. So every person that's arrested on the subway, they have no intention of paying their fare. So if the officers could have used that as a deterrent to stopping some of the crime, but they can't because they took that tool away from them. And they also, with that, bail reform, where now you can do a horrific crime on the streets of New York and be out the same night because some progressive thinks, oh, bail is just supposed to be that you show up at your next court date. It's not supposed to be punitive where you're being punished, because if someone's rich and does the same crime, they can just post the cash bail. But in the law, wasn't written, there was no wisdom in the law. There should have been discretion by judges. Well, if you do this crime, you're not getting bailed no matter who the hell you are. So all of these things created the perfect storm. And the disdain for police in New York City, taking the power away from them and the respect away from them, it seems to be a planned progressive agenda. And this is the cherry on top of the cake. Phil.
Yeah, here's the bottom line, Billy. You can build all the social networks and you can have social workers all you want, but when there's a knife or a gun, you need the police, period, end of story. Now, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but we've gone through this tonight and we've gone through it on previous shows. What the fare evasion, when it was a misdemeanor, when I was a transit cop, you were able to either write a summons for it if the person had all of their identification, or on specific date and times when they had a station where nobody was paying the fare, they would go do enforcement. And like you said, they would arrest the people, charge them with a misdemeanor. They'd spend a day or two in jail. And you would see how fast the next time that they were going into the subway system that they would pay the fare. Now, with all the cameras that we have in today's world in the subway system and throughout the city, they can tell when a criminal gets on the train and doesn't pay the fare and then commits a crime and then exits. So with all of that said, these are simple policies, and they really could bring down crime within the subway system a lot and throughout the whole city. And we always, we fall back on the broken windows policy that worked under a previous administration, under Mayor Giuliani. When you look at the small things and you enforce the small things, the bigger things don't happen. So crime can definitely be handled. It can be brought down. It has been brought down recently under Commissioner Tisch. I saw a report today where I think 6 of the 7 major categories, crime had dropped. So we're going in the right direction. Let's see what happens, because let's face it, if Mamdani institutes policies that aren't going to work, the people are going to feel it right away within a weekend. But if he institutes policies that will work, everybody will feel safer. It's as simple as that.
And the other problem is that recruitment and retention of NYPD officers, they're bleeding. They're bleeding officers. 5,000 is supposed to leave by January. So it's a horrible situation.
More than 1,000 recruits into the academy this summer, one of the largest classes in nearly a decade. But community leaders say thousands more are needed to keep crime down. Jennifer Bisram takes a closer look at one Bronx community in dire need of more officers.
We work doubles at a time, sometimes triples. You're pumping caffeine through your system just to kind of keep you going.
He didn't just walk the beat. Officer Sanchez says for over 8 years, he carried the weight on his conscience every day.
You're a liability at that time. You're not even a cop. You're a liability to the department.
He worked at the NYPD's 45th Police Precinct in the Bronx until he says he just couldn't take the long hours, forced overtime, and random posts outside of his assigned precinct anymore.
The longest I've ever done continuously was about 30 hours straight.
What?
That I could remember. Yeah, it was 30 hours straight.
He handed in his badge earlier this year.
You don't know what time you're getting off. You have pets, you have family, you have kids. You don't know exactly when you're going to see them.
Councilwoman Christy Marmorato represents the Northeast Bronx.
I've seen an increase in crime, especially in my district in the 45th precinct.
City data shows a 10% increase in major crime in the area compared to the same time last year.
It's very frustrating because my community is a very pro-NYPD community. We love to see police presence in our neighborhood.
George Havernick is a community activist and member of the 4-5 Precinct Community Council.
I have seniors telling me, I am afraid to go to the bank until my son comes to take me or my daughter comes to take me.
According to the police union, there are 136 officers assigned to the 4-5, 17 added just last month. But that's not including sick outs and officers that get temporarily assigned to the military and other areas. For comparison, in 2020, the precinct had 164 officers.
On a daily basis, they're taking police officers to go to transit, they're taking police officers to go crime areas, and they're taking them out of those communities where, they need police officers too.
PBA President Patrick Hendry says there's an ongoing staffing crisis. The city's independent budget office shows the NYPD roster at 34,455 officers compared to 40,285 officers back in 2000.
We lost over 15,000 police officers. That's a staggering number.
Hendry says they've been losing about 300 officers a month. So far this year, over 2,400 officers retired or quit. He says New York City officers need better pay, benefits, and overall quality of life.
They're staying until they get something better.
Back in northeastern Bronx, Councilwoman Marmorato has funded cameras at Ferry Point Park to help deter crime. But that's not all.
200 Ring camera giveaway in both precincts, so about 400 in total. Because of auto crimes in the district, we have given away the club that locks onto the steering wheel.
As for Officer Sanchez, who now works at a department outside of New York City,
I still do kind of miss the city. I do want better for, the people that are still there.
The NYPD says the department hired 2,911 recruits this year, including nearly 1,100 in August, the largest since 2016, with another one scheduled. Adding the NYPD remains laser focused on continuing our recruitment efforts and bringing in the next generation of officers. Jennifer Bisram, CBS News.
So there are ramifications to all of this. And as we said, the NYPD is bleeding officers. These new progressive policies, unproven, they will make sure that they work, whether they have to fudge the statistics or whatever they have to do, they're going to work. Although I doubt that this whole Department of Community Safety, I think that's going to be a huge failure. I think it's going to be a huge waste of money. And I think whenever they respond to certain jobs, they're going to have the police come along with them because it'll be too dangerous to a civilian to respond to those jobs. Folks, we wanted to get our feet wet again and get back on the air and feel what it's like to be the real police off the cuffers again. So we thought, what better way to cover this story? NYPD under scrutiny and some of these radical plans that are they're underway. They're planning them. Mike, your final thoughts.
Yeah, Bill, when they just talk about the 4-5 precinct, I worked in the 5-0 precinct for 2 years, and and we had even more officers than the 4-5. That number is really low when you think about the squad you have to man. You go in 24 hours a day, 7 days a week with police officers working. That number, 136, is criminally undermanned, and that's dangerous for everybody. So the ideas that Mamdani has, he means, I'll give it to him. He means well, but he has no idea what he's talking about.
No, I don't think he does mean well. I think this is ideology. I don't think he means well. Phil, your final thoughts.
Billy, I have to agree with you what you last said there. The bottom line is that obviously I don't want anybody to be misled. Do I want him to do a good job and keep the city safe? 100%. It's the city that I love. With regard to morale in the police department, it was down from the de Blasio days. There were times when he showed up at a cop's funeral and everybody turned their back on him. The morale is generally not good, but cops aren't going to walk away from it unless the commissioner, the mayor, and the city council doesn't have their back. They're not afraid to do the job. Let's get that clear. They're not afraid to do the job. But when you look at videos of a police officer that gave somebody a summons the day before, and I saw this yesterday, and somebody's chasing them with a camera, cursing at them, vulgarity, give me your business card, give me your business card, because they know if they don't give that business card, they could lose 5 days' pay. So Mamdani has a big situation that he has to try and undertake. Let's hope he does good for the city. But Billy, I got to tell you, I agree with you. He's a known socialist, communist, and I think it's an ideology at hand. He's going to try to implement these things. I don't think they're going to be successful. Let's hope good for New York City.
Absolutely. You know, folks, this is our first show back after the hacking of our channel. We're so thrilled to be back. This wasn't a nationally trending story, but it's a story that is close to our hearts, and we love New York City. We love the NYPD. And even though we don't agree with Zoran Mamdani, we hope he is successful, because that means New York City will be successful. Folks, thank you so much for tuning in. I'm Bill Cannon from Police Off the Cuff Real Crime Stories. On behalf of myself, Professor Mike Geary, retired NYPD Detective Phil Grimaldi, thank you so much for tuning in. Have a great night. God bless.
Stay safe, everyone.
One episode just ain't enough.